You know, the story of Saint Paisios is a story of how God works in our lives. And nothing is by accident. And every saint that is that kind of is lifted up and shown to us at a certain time, at any time, is shown to us for a specific purpose. For example, just to take one example, the great St. John of Damascus came at a time when the church needed a theologian who was free from not involved in the empire's conflict, outside of that, to give a theological perspective that was unbiased. John, the theologian, lived under the Muslims at the time, in Damascus and then in the monastery of St. Savas in Palestine. Well, that was a difficult time, and the writings of St. John of Damascus were influential in the final conclusion of the conflict. And then there is Palamas later. And there's others too. I mean, every period of time and every time of difficulty, there is a saint who kind of is raised by God and stands out and affects the lives of people and corrects what is happening. So you're going to say to me, what is at this time when Paisios is revealed to us? Well, it's a time of decline, of spiritual decline. In the Orthodox world in general, in Greece, in Cyprus, Russia was under the communists, and the other Eastern European countries, Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania, they were all under the communists. So there is decline, spiritual decline. In Greece and Cyprus, there is spiritual decline not because of communism, but because of materialism. So all of these things are antichrist elements, antichrist phenomena that people just give in and they become victims of them. So, because of the materialistic outlook of the world of that time, Mount Athos, first of all, because of communism, the great lavra of St. Panteleimon, the Russian one, was empty, because communists wouldn't let the Russians come, the Greeks wouldn't let communists come, therefore the lavra, which hosted more than 2,000 monks, was completely empty. There was hardly 2 or 3 of them that were basically holding the doors open. We're talking about the 70s now, in the 70s. And then, of course, subsequently we see the change. So in the 70s, 1970s, Mount Athos is in such decline that most of the monks are basically over 75 and much older sometimes. And some of the younger monks are there just to enjoy the richness of, of nature and the freedom that they get, free food and whatever. So most of the monasteries were even idiorhythmic. They were not synobitic, which means that they live together and do things together. They were idiorhythmic. Everybody did whatever they wanted. The monks did whatever they wanted. Great decline. The buildings were falling apart. Mount Athos can hold, 10,000 monks. And at that time, the monasteries were empty and they were falling apart. Physically falling apart. Ruins. Okay, the great lavra, the 2 great lavras falling apart. 80-year-old monks just hanging around and trying to keep the doors open. And this is all because of materialism. The Greeks were freed from the Turks, and they went with passion, accumulating richness and accumulating the world, taking in the world. And monasticism was looked down upon. And then something happened. The Turkish invasion of Cyprus, which happened on the 20th of July in 1974. And there was despair everywhere. There was pain and sorrow. Thousands of people killed, destruction of churches and and people, and we'll be talking about this next week when Bishop Sebastianos comes to commemorate that feast, that event. So, anybody who looked at Mount Athos at that time in 1974 would say it's closing down. There's nobody here who cares. God has forgotten us. But you know what? God did not forget us. There was Paisios and a few others. When I say a few others, I mean some giants who all have been recognized as saints in the last 5-10 years. One after the other, the Patriarchate of Constantinople is recognizing them as saints. But Paisios stood out. In 1974 and subsequently, he stood out. I met him in 1986. So by then, he was really famous. So all those years, what this hymn says, the Doxastikon on page 18, is very true. Comfort, yes, comfort my people, says the prophet. For our God is a God of comfort. He raised Paisios to comfort the people because this pain and people in sorrow about what was happening to their world was falling apart. They sought comfort in Paisios. He came out of the desert, allowed them to meet him, and gave them guidance and gave them comfort. So that's repeated later in the Apolitikion of Saint Paisios on page 20. Once the fire of love for the Lord was lit in you, through ascetical rigor you gave yourself to God. O God-bearing Saint Paisios, for many you became consolation, giving counsel with God-inspired words, and by your prayers working wonders. And that's what he was. Okay? By the time I met him, he was so famous about all kinds of things. We can talk about some of those tomorrow. Father John can say some things, I can say some things perhaps. But God has not forgotten his people. And that's the point I'm trying to make. When even when we are falling away from him, he finds the people like Paisios, like Palamas, like John of Damascus, and so many others along the centuries, who are raised by him to become lighthouses of the light of God, shining in front of people to show them the way back to God. So when the young men from Cyprus and Greece and all the other Greek communities around the world who were shaken by the events in Cyprus, okay, especially the Cypriots, but everybody too, around the world, all the Greeks around the world were shaken. And the Orthodox in the other countries too, but most of them were under the communists, so they couldn't really react that much. They were shaken by the events of 1974 and the invasion of Cyprus and the destruction of that civilization by the Turks. They turned to Mount Athos. They went there and they found empty monasteries. But then they found Paisios. And he became their guide. The group that took over the monastery of Vadopedi, which is the one that Father Athanasios of Limassol, the Metropolitan of Limassol, is also a member of. They received direction from Paisios. They had a spiritual father, Father Yosif, but it's Paisios that really gave them the foundations. And it's through Paisios that they saw the presence of God. They saw the miracles happening. They saw the Theotokos appearing. Father Athanasios, Bishop Athanasios, he talks about the light that filled the room while he was praying with Paisios. These things didn't happen to just anyone. And God did not reveal them to just anyone. He revealed them through him. That's why he was the first one to be recognized as a saint in the modern times. So what we have is, around him, all these young monks are coming, and they're receiving from him. All these young men are coming, and they're receiving from him direction, and they become monks. And they fill the monasteries. Then there were other groups also that God called in, and they filled the monasteries. There are more than 2,500 monks on Mount Athos today. from like a couple of hundred in the 70s, we're at 2,500. They serve liturgy every day, everywhere. Every monastery, every skiddy, every small cell, they serve liturgy. Hundreds of liturgies every day. And Mount Athos received life again because of Paisios and some others. But he is at the center of all these modern saints. God never forgets us, even when we forget him. And he raises saints to bring us back to the path to his kingdom. Thank you.